Hi guys, and welcome to my new channel, JD Below Ground. On this channel specifically, we're going to be focusing on gourmet mushroom cultivation. We're going to be going through some different mushroom facts, and we're also going to be doing some different mushroom experiments. So if you like the content, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Okay guys, in today's video we're going to be learning how to make grain spawn, because grain spawn is the very first thing you need to know as a mushroom cultivator. It's what all cultivators start out mushrooms on. We're going to be spawning in the next video. We're going to be spawning them with some golden oyster mushrooms and some blue oyster mushrooms, but this grain spawn is universal and can be used for lion's mane or portobello or really any type of mushroom that you have. Alright, so items we're going to need for today, we're going to need mushroom spawn jars. In a different video, I'm going to show you how to make mushroom spawn jars, but you can really just go online and buy some if you want. They're not that expensive, and if you're not trying to make this a huge deal, then it's not a big deal. So just go online like Amazon, search grain spawn jars, and you'll find some. So we need grain spawn jars, we're going to need a pressure cooker, we're going to need grain spawn, which in this video I'm going to be using rye berries. You can also use like popcorn from the store. You can just go to the store and get like popcorn seeds and use those, or really any other type of seed. You can use bird seed if you wanted to. That process is a little bit different because you have to take out some of the bad seeds in it, but anyways, really that's all you need. Alright, so without further ado, let's get to the video. Alright guys, to start things off, we're going to take our grain jars and we are going to fill them up about a quarter of the way to almost halfway up with dry grain. This will allow the grains room to expand, but not all the way to the top of the jar. We're going to have the grains fill up pretty much until the concave of the top of the jar. This is going to leave a small little pocket of air that's going to help allow the exchange of gases that the mycelium will give off, because it will take in oxygen and breathe off carbon dioxide. Okay guys, now that we have our grain measured out, I'm doing about 4 jars here. We're going to take this over to the sink and give it a good wash, because when the grains come from the mill, they're very dusty, and we don't want that. We want to wash that dust off, because that dust can make the grains stick together inside of the final product, and we need to be able to shake these jars and have the grain move around once we're all done, because that helps the mycelium move around inside the jars and helps colonize the jars quicker. So we're going to give this a quick rinse. I should also note that this is just kind of my way to rinse the dust off. Lots of other people like to be really thorough and put it in buckets and strain it out 2 or 3 times to get all the dust off of it, but I get these grains from a milling company that's already pretty clean about their grains, so they don't have a lot of dust on them in the first place. Now that we've washed off the rye berries of most of the dust, we're going to go ahead and put it in a bowl and fill the bowl up about 3/4 of the way, or maybe a couple inches just above the rye berries, and we're going to let it soak here for about 4 hours and give the rye berries a chance to absorb some water and also soften the outside of them. At this stage is where we want to add our optional ingredients if you have them. This is gypsum, and it's calcium sulfate. It's a mineral that helps the mushrooms grow, but also helps keep the rye berries from sticking together. And so overall, this is a great thing to have in your mix. Alright, our next optional ingredient is used coffee grounds. You can also use new coffee grounds. It doesn't really matter, but I mean, it's way more convenient to just use your old coffee grounds you had sitting around and drying. This will give the mushrooms more nutrients to munch on and add lots of nitrogen to our mix. Alright, now we're going to want to mix this up really well, and we're going to let this sit for 4 hours. Now that we've had our mix sitting for about 4 hours, we're going to take all of this mix and pour it into a large pot, and then we're going to take this pot and put it on the stove and heat it up to a simmer. The reason we do this is to help the grains rapidly absorb all the water that's in there, and you can't go over 7 or 8 minutes because then the grains will get too done and you'll end up with something that resembles mashed potatoes. So avoid that. I've done this multiple times. Do not forget about your grains. Another little side note is you really probably don't want to use kitchen utensils that you're planning on using a lot, because the gypsum and coffee are going to stain your kitchen utensils that you use, except for like, you know, whatever you stir it with and stuff. But I have this pot from the dollar store just for this process pretty much. Now once you see it start simmering, you want to start rapidly stirring the mixture. This will keep the grains from sticking to the bottom and make sure the heat is evenly distributed. Alright, like I said, it needs to simmer for 7 to 8 minutes exactly. I say 7 to 8 minutes because depending on how hot your stove is, your results could be a little bit different. I think I soaked mine for 7.5. You want it to come out looking like this. Any more than that and your grains could turn to mashed potatoes at the end of the process, and it's not fun because this process takes a while to do, so you don't really want to mess this step up. So now that our grains are perfectly soaked, we're going to take them and put them into a strainer and kind of let everything steam off. And this is also kind of another important step, but while your rye berries are draining here, you want to make sure and take your utensil and mix around the rye berries a little bit, and this will allow the moisture that's trapped in between the middle of the rye berries to evaporate off a little bit, and you'll be left with a rye berry that is absorbed with water and somewhat dry on the outside. And if you avoid doing this step, you'll end up with some water in the bottom of your jars, and that is a good way to get contamination in the bottom of your jars, and we don't want that. Alright, now we're going to take our mix and dump it into a large bowl, and it's time to actually fill up our mushroom jars. So like I said earlier, you're going to take your mix and fill a little more than 3/4 of the way up. You want it about to the point on these mason jars where it curves at the top. Like I said, this will allow for gas exchange and room so you can shake the jar around when the mycelium is growing. Alright, we're coming towards one of our last steps here, which is to wrap the tops in aluminum foil. This will prevent the condensation that builds up in the pressure cooker from dripping back down into the jar, creating water again in the bottom of the jar and risking contamination. Now, before you load things into the pressure cooker, you really want to make sure that there's something on the bottom of the pressure cooker. You don't want the jars touching the bottom of the pressure cooker directly where all the intense heat is, because this will either cook your grains or shatter your jar, and we don't want that. Alright, I'm showing you the water level right here. I have it about 1/4 of the way up the jars, maybe between 1/4 and 1/2. This will allow for enough water to be in there for your full 90-minute pressure cook. And not allow it to be steaming off your jars at the very end of the cycle. Some people use way less water than this, but I've never seen it really hurt anything of mine. I'm also showing you that I have other jars in here filled with water so that my jars are stuck and they won't move or fall over in this process. Now it's time to lock the pressure cooker lid and make sure you put on your pressure cooker valve cap, and you're going to go ahead and turn your stove on and let your pressure cooker heat up to 15 psi. If you don't have one of these fancy pressure cookers, don't worry about the pressure gauge. If you have something that's just steaming like this, it's going to be at about 15. But once you get it to this point, you want to take your heat and put it at about medium, and then cook it for an hour and a half. An hour and a half later, it's time to shut the stove off and then begin the cool down. Okay, so after you have let it sit for a while, after you've shut it off, and you can take this off and see that there's no pressure left, your lock should be down on the top of your pressure cooker, enabling you to open it. Woo! Watch out for that. And make sure you use an oven mitt with this step because they come out very hot, obviously. But this is your final product, and these grains are not too dry and not too wet. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to give me a like. It helps me keep this channel going, and I hope this helps you along your mushroom adventures. I hope you guys have a great time growing. It's really fun, and I hope my video helped you out. Happy mushing!